Hi, everybody. It's Tanisha and Courtney. I'm Tanisha.
And I'm Courtney.
And we're back with Ryan Reviews. We missed you guys. We're excited to do this episode on the second day of Black History Month. And so for this season, we're going to be reviewing Killer Mike. Killer Mike's show on Netflix called Trigger Warning.
Yep, so I guess you can tell we're rusty, but we did really miss you guys. It took us a really long time to figure out what else we could review. We couldn't agree on anything, but I relented and said, sure, I'll watch Killer Mike. And here we are.
Here we are. So before we get into the actual episodes, as you know, we also do the review of The Rye. And so for this week's episode, we have Wasman's, I hope I'm saying that right, Rye Spirit. It's actually our first clear or white rye. It's quite strong, but quite good, so we highly recommended it. And for myself, I'm just drinking this straight, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's really good, it's really smooth, and we recommend it.
Yeah, I've actually been sipping on it with my coffee. We started out with breakfast this morning, and it is really good. It says on the bottle that it comes with some type of applewood, and it's 60% applewood, 40% cherrywood, and with a light smoke. And I can tell you that you can absolutely taste it in this. This was my first ever white rye.
Yeah.
I didn't even know they made white rye. The guy at the liquor store said this is what happens when it doesn't age as long in the barrel. Apparently the amber comes from the aging process in the barrel. But it's interesting. I think you guys should go out and buy a bottle and check it out. And it is, well, we're in DC, so it's kind of a local rye because it's out of Virginia. So,
Yep. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right. Whew.
I like it better in the coffee.
Put some hair in your chest. All right. So let's get into the first episode. It's called Living Black. So
It took your breath.
take my breath away, like, oh
Man.
man, I haven't been drinking whiskey in a while. So.
Oh, if any of you guys know, it says that this is 62%. So it's 124 proof. I'm not sure if that's high or low for a rye. So, I mean, let us know in the comments if you know if it's high or low for a rye.
Yeah.
She hasn't had any rye take her breath before, so maybe it means it's high.
But yeah, so for this episode, it's called Living Black, and the synopsis for this show is that Killer Mike, he's based out of Atlanta, and he really wants to try to basically live black for 3 straight days. So he has a concert in Athens, Georgia, and so the episode just goes through him trying to figure out how to buy black in all aspects of his life. So that's what the episode is about.
I love this episode. I really didn't know what to expect getting into this show. I don't know much about Killer Mike. I got a synopsis about him before we started watching. And what I found out, I guess initially gave me pause because I don't really like people preaching at me about their politics. But I loved the first episode. He had me hooked because if you know me, I love to buy black owned. I have black owned watch, I have black owned face products, I have black owned hair care products, black owned shea butter. I mean, I love to buy black owned. So to hear that he was opening up with trying to be black owned for 3 days straight, it was 3 days, right?
Yeah, 3 days.
3 days was interesting. But it also pointed out what was real. It's hard to just be black owned. It really is. And even when you're trying to be black owned and you think you're being black owned, you're really not. And I will point out, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've done a lot of research into this. I'll point out that they even messed up at the end of the episode by scrolling across black-owned companies, and one was Carol's Daughter, and Carol's Daughter, I believe, was sold to one of the larger companies, so it's no longer black-owned. So, but that's, being petty. But yeah, throughout the episode, we see that, being black-owned is tough. And he starts out with the history of how, we were forced to be black owned and then we fought for integration and now we kind of refuse to be black owned. The black dollar stays in the black community for 6 hours. That's a really striking, stat.
Yeah, in comparison, I think to Asians, he said it was 29 days, and for white and Jewish people, it's 21 days.
Right. And just for me personally, what started my, Buy Black Owned initiative was the fact that I took note of that. It's like everyone once, DVF or once Prada or once whatever. And the only thing that really makes these products good is the fact that somebody liked it and it got more popular. And sure, the quality might have increased, and everybody has their arguments to where the quality is better versus this, that, and the third. But where it all started was somebody put them on. And we dive into that head first. And because someone put it on, we say, okay, well, this must be a good product, everybody's wearing it. It's just like, I was having a conversation with somebody at work, and he was asking me about the Canada Goose jackets. Mm-hmm. And he was like, what do you know about the Canada Goose jackets? And I'm like, it just seems like the next new popular warm coat. Like, it started out with North Face, and then after everybody stopped wearing North Face, then they all started wearing these Canada Goose jackets, and then at one point they were robbing each other over those Moncler jackets or whatever. And it's just basically like, it's the new trend, but black-owned businesses is never the next trend. So for me, I was like, you know what, if I can go buy a watch, like this watch right here, this G-Shock, if I can go spend $150 on a G-Shock, and Casio doesn't necessarily do anything for my community, I can also go find a black-owned watchmaker. Tally and Twine was the name of the company that I went with. Went and got the watch. I get more compliments on that watch than actual expensive watches that I own. So,
I mean, for me, this episode, it really just thinking about the historical and political aspects of it. This goes back to some of the arguments that Black people have been talking about for a while, and one of the most controversial is, was desegregation actually good for the Black community? And a lot of people always bring up, whenever we have this argument, the Black Wall Street out in Oklahoma, in Greenwood, Oklahoma, how there was Black businesses everywhere, Black churches, like everything was Black. People really did well. And I don't want to sugarcoat things. Obviously, there was, at least at that time, there was a lot of wealth in that community, but there also was poverty, just like any other city. But during that time, a lot of people who lived in that era, they just talked about the fact that it was really nice that you went to your hairdresser was Black, you went to your grocer was Black, and it was great. But they were forced to do that because they couldn't live anywhere else. They were redlined or just straight prohibited from living anywhere else, and they couldn't buy from anywhere else. And I'm not sure how many people know about this, but after the race riot in Oklahoma, where they just basically, white people came in, burned down places, killed people, burned down their homes, the Black community was actually able to rebuild, but at a certain point in time, that area became less successful because of desegregation. So it's really just like, well, even though we were prohibited from buying white, there were some benefits to that because we were able to reinvest in our communities and build up other Black businesses. It was all about camaraderie and helping out fellow business owners at that time, and not just in that community, but others. I think that's a very prominent example. So now it's just like, I don't know why certain people are embracing that, but I don't know why we got so far from that. Like, yes, racism is bad, but why did we get so far from, like, let's help build up and support Black businesses so we can prosper as a community? So it just takes me back to those kinds of arguments, this whole episode.
Well, I mean, you want to move on?
No.
No, I think one of the reasons why we got away from it is because segregation also had its, it like you said, segregation was bad. It had its downside. To sugarcoat it, it had its downside. And to get away from that downside, you had to force integration. Now, quite frankly, I think that if I were living in a segregated environment, like it was back then, I would have tried to Marcus Garvey my way out of this country. But that's just me. I've always wondered why we were fighting so hard to be a part of this. And once you get in, right, it's a system that's designed to keep certain people at the top and keep other people controlled. So, sure, you're in your integrated schools and your integrated businesses or whatever, but you're still in a system that's designed to keep a certain, certain swath of society at the top and in control of others. Mm-hmm. So you're still going to be at the bottom essentially, no matter how high you climb. You know what I'm saying? So we can make it to the boardrooms and we can make it, to the tops of these companies, but we're still in, fighting to be what the white man wants us to be. It's a white male-dominated, controlled society, and that's what it is. That's how it was set up. That's what it's always going to be until it gets turned on its head. So when we're fighting into that, we're also contributing to, I guess what I was talking about earlier, is like we're contributing to the white man's ideal of success, and we're striving to be that sort of success, right? So that leads you away from going to your local store and giving the black guy who's struggling, you know, the money for the shoes that he's making by hand, when you can go buy some shoes that's popular in a store that's being made in China.
And very expensive.
And very expensive in China, and putting your money in these white businesses. Because that's the success you're striving for. Like, that's the success that we've been told is success here in America. Whatever, you know, the people who are in control deems as success, that's what we're looking for. And to support your own community, particularly the black community, if we're talking about class structure, and a race, you know, we're at the bottom. Like, we're beneath immigrants. I mean, except for maybe Mexicans. Yes, I think that's why immigrants come to this country and do everything that they can do, even African immigrants, to separate themselves from black Americans.
I don't think that's true for, I think maybe for black immigrants, they might have it better than us in some ways, but like not immigrants from Central America and South America, I don't think that's true.
Maybe not. Anyways, I think that society wants us to strive for a particular type of success. That doesn't mean go support your local black business.
There it is. I mean, I really enjoyed this episode. I try to support black businesses whenever I can, but I've never taken it to where he did in this episode. I mean, at one point he was at this, I guess, really good barbecue place in Athens, Georgia, black owned, but because the food didn't come from like a black farm or I guess black butchers, he didn't eat it. Now, I don't know if I would ever go that far, but I think his point was at a certain point in time, black people would raise their own cattle or raise their own animals to, you know, eat and also grow their own food. And again, we've gotten very far away from that. And there is something to be said, like, why can't we go back to that where we can have more sustainability, maybe be able to feed a lot more people if we knew how to grow our own food? Like, why can't we go back to that? So even though I don't know if I would go to that extreme in order to support a black business, I certainly think it's worthwhile to sort of ask those questions and see if there's a way for people who are interested and willing to do the farming. Like, why can't we do that? Like, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it's certainly feasible, and it might help solve a lot of the problems that we have right now in terms of people going hungry, people having to use government benefits in order to get food and having restrictions on what they can get. Like, maybe if they had an investment in what they were eating because it came from their own work, maybe it would be different. So I just thought this episode gave me at least a lot to think about, and also to really sort of try more in terms of supporting black businesses, because I do think it's important.
I'm all about it. Buy black owned. You buy black owned, I buy black owned, you buy black owned, and watch this black ass show. But he pointed out what was real. Like, if you get really down to it, sure, we're two black people doing a show talking about black shows, but who are the producers? I mean, shoot, YouTube isn't black owned. Like, you know, we can't even be brought to you without, there has to be some type of integration. There is some non-black intervention, and it's really hard to be 100% black owned, but you could take a step. You know, like, I use Scotch Porter products, right? I talk about them all the time, and if they would like to sign me up as a brand ambassador, I am available for work, just to let you know. But I really like it. I really like the business model. I like how it was started, and I actually like the products, right? So it's easy for me to say, hey, you guys go try this Scotch Porter or whatever, or like the Shea Butter place in Baltimore. It's easy for me to say, oh, I really like the Shea Butter. The Shea Butter comes in like 6 different fragrances or something like that. They have a store in Lexington Market. It's online. You know, I think they have a couple stores down south. You know, so if you just go out and explore and see the black businesses that are out there, you might realize that they might be offering a product that you like that's better than Dove. Right. Or whatever, you know, where people always run to go get Dove, like that's the good soap. Like, you might be able to go find you a handmade black soap in your neighborhood. I mean, it's really easy for me. In Baltimore, I found it really easy to just go find black owned. Without even looking for black owned, I've been able to find black owned restaurants, black owned, you know, tailors, black owned everything. And that's just like Googling what's the best tailor in the neighborhood, and it sends me to a black-owned tailor. So it's been actually really easy to find black-owned in Baltimore. Would it be that easy in Bel Air? No. Where I'm from, Bel Air, Ohio, I can almost guarantee you, without a shadow of a doubt, we have 0 black-owned anythings in Bel Air, Ohio. Black-owned homes, and that's probably few and far between still. So it depends on where you are, but I think it can be done. We have websites. There are tons of black-owned businesses with websites. You know, people were talking about the Jenner girl with her makeup line and how it's made her $1 billion.
Oh,
Well, there's I forget her name, but it's like called Crayola or something like, not Crayola, but it's crayon-based theme, the boxes. It looks like a box of crayons. A black lady who started her own makeup line, and she's making money hand over fist, but is she getting the same promotion as Kylie Jenner? No. But, I mean, if more people just looked into her, even Rihanna with her Fenty products and stuff like that.
Fenty,
You know, like,
Minted Cosmetics is another black-owned.
you don't have to go get
company.
MAC. You know, you can go
And-
support black-owned.
I mean, and I do want to say, because I feel like a lot of this conversation is like, oh, you want people to go black-owned, you must be anti-white, or you're, suggesting that people should be anti-white, and that's not what we're suggesting, but I do think that there is this attitude in the commercial space where if it's associated with whiteness, it must be better, it must be top quality, you should go get it. And so what we're really saying is it's okay to go and look for black businesses. It might not be as obvious because a lot of these brands have been around for 50 years, like a Dove and things like that, but you can find brands who offer something, if not similar. It might be better depending on what you're interested in, depending on what's going on in your life. Like some people, especially people who have like certain skin conditions associated with black people, I know that they try to be very specific and do the research in terms of like we have this product that will specifically address those issues, and that can be really important. So what we're saying is maybe just do the extra work in order to find other options instead of just assuming by default that some of these products are better or just relying on them as a default. So yeah.
So I feel like we pretty much did a PSA for Buy Black Owned, and we didn't really actually talk about the episode. So let's get into some of the funnier things of the episode. One, I found it really striking that he couldn't go 3 days without weed. Like, that was his main concern. Like, where am I going to get this weed? And listen, I know you guys who are my friends are always shocked at how anti-drugs I am, but I am kind of anti-drugs. Sorry. So it does strike me that you can't go 3 days without. It's 3 days.
I can relate to that at all. I don't get it. That's just not me. That's not my lifestyle. But it sounds like from what he said in that episode and subsequent episodes that it's an everyday thing. So if it becomes an everyday habit, I think it would be hard. Like anything else. Like once you're used to something, you're used to doing something like to relax. Maybe people with their glass of wine. I can relate to that. Yeah, it's weird. It's something that you are used to. So yeah, it was kind of like, dang, you can't give up weed for 3 days. But if it has become a habit, it sounds like it has, then yeah, it might be a little bit of a struggle.
Only thing in life I can't go out for 3 days is literally air. I could give up anything for 3 days.
And we should say, because he mentioned the fact that he could buy from a black dealer, but not the weed would actually come from a white grower. I think there are certain places, and unfortunately I don't have any examples, but I think there are certain places that are now also supporting black growers. So that's something you might want to look into if you're really into weed, apparently.
All right. Let's see. The black car situation. So the only black car company, well, the only one that I was able to find in the United States died in 1939. It started in 1893. I think it was Andersons and Sons or something like that. So we did have a black-owned car manufacturer in the United States.
Didn't know that.
But it's no longer here. So, I mean, for his purposes, yeah, he's going to have to walk and bike everywhere. And I like that WeCycle thing. I'm actually going to look into their shop.
Shauna Walton in Atlanta. WeCycle.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right, Shauna Walton in Atlanta. But there is a black-owned car manufacturer who's been making strides. And it's in Ghana, Accra, Ghana. And I think it's called Katonka. Yeah, Katonka Motors, or Katonka Group. And it's a younger person, actually, that started this car company, and it started getting buzz back in 2016. Apparently, it's still going. And they have quite the lineup, SUVs and cars and everything. So I don't know if I'm pretty sure they're not importing. Back in 2016, the article said they were making like 100 cars a month. I mean, you got to start small, but the fact that it's still going is encouraging, if you ask me. And if anybody's interested, Ghana has started this Come Back to Ghana thing this year. So, I mean, give it a try. I loved Ghana. You can go see the slave castles and the coast, and just get a pretty good bit of real Africa, at least in Ghana. Haven't been to any other African nations, so I can only tell you to go see Ghana because I enjoyed Ghana. Anything?
The only other thing I really wanted to highlight was it called Figure Phone?
Figure phones. I didn't know we had black-owned phone.
I didn't know this either.
Maker. And
now I want to look into it.
Yeah, me too. And it sounded like they might make like an iPad type of thing too. Like, shoot, Apple has plenty of my money, and so does Samsung. And because I'm actually an Android person, but I did have an iPhone beforehand.
And the phone looked good. I mean, I'm not sure in terms of how it works. He didn't give a review for the products, but it looked like an Apple or some Samsung phone, so it looked good.
The only thing I worry about though is like, the phone dies, then what? Like, or if it needs to be fixed, then what?
Oh, do you have to go ship it out instead of like going up to the
right, going to the that's the only thing, servicing in that area. So, but I'm willing to look into the phone, maybe give it a try. I thought it was ridiculous that his example for black nightlife or black-owned nightlife was the freaking strip club. Like, we don't have any other black-owned night, especially in Atlanta. We don't have any black-owned nightlife club. I mean, in Atlanta.
Again, I mean, I see what you're saying. Although in Atlanta, strip clubs are very prominent. But again, I think that goes back to his habits and what he's used to. Could he have highlighted like maybe a jazz club, a lounge?
He should have went to that tighter club Peter's been running since he started it off of Real Housewives.
Oh, I don't know.
But me neither. But still, I mean, something else. Maybe you don't like Peter. Maybe they got beef. And then for me, my last point was, it was interesting to me that he did all of this, 3 days, black-owned, educating people, whatever, and then went right back to giving his concert to his majority white audience. Mm. So.
I mean, I don't know what he can do about that. At the end of the day, he's an entertainer. He doesn't have control over the people who buy his music or who want to go to his concerts. I don't know, should he have shunned them once he saw
I don't think he should have shunned them.
Majority white audience, or what should he have done?
I don't think he should have shunned them or shamed them, but he specifically crafted an episode to educate people on the history of black-owned and, supporting our own community and getting back to black-owned. I mean, he went to a restaurant, ordered food, and decided because the pig didn't come from a black farm, or he might not have been eating pork, but whatever. Since the meat didn't come from a black farm, he couldn't have the food. So should he have shunned his audience? Maybe. Or, I mean, given that argument there, maybe. Or maybe he should find new ways to market directly to black audiences. Maybe he needs to change his ticket sales. Maybe he needs to change where he's having the concert. He goes all the way to Athens to have a concert in Atlanta in Georgia anyways.
We're assuming that he hasn't, though, or you're assuming that he hasn't. I don't know how he markets his stuff. I really, to be quite honest, I didn't really know about Killer Mike until about, 2016 when he came out as a big backer of Bernie Sanders. It wasn't until then that I heard he was a rapper. Just recently found out that he's been out since 2000. So to be honest, I can't speak to how he markets himself or whatever he's doing because I don't know. But to your point, he's no different than any other rap artist. Most rap is consumed by white people. So again, I see your point. It's just an
interesting way to end the episode that's all about black-owned.
It's a realistic way. This concert was there. That's his audience. I don't even know the demographics of Athens, but it seems like a majority white town.
I think he was probably giving a concert at the University of Georgia because I think that's where that is.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, it's just an observation. I'm not saying he did anything right, not saying anything he did wrong. I'm saying it's an observation. We did all of this black-owned, and then we just ccame on back to white folks.
All right. Well, on that note, so overall, what's your grade for this episode?
That episode gets like an A+++ for me.
I agree. I thought it was a strong episode. I thought it was very informative. I appreciated him highlighting black businesses and really making people think about where they're buying. So I agree. A+.
A+. All right, so we're gonna keep this going, actually. So this is gonna be a long video, guys. I know that you say that we make long videos, anyways, but at least we're fitting in a couple episodes of this one. So moving on from the first episode, we watched the second episode, which was entitled "Fuck School," right?
Yes.
Or at least he said it in there. But the title of it was "Fuck School," which, given the title, I expected something completely different.
What did you think it was going to be?
Well, I thought he was going to talk about how the education system is failing people in a different way. So it was going to be like changing the education system to do better and teach different history and this, that, and the third. I didn't know that he was going to essentially Booker T. Washington these children.
And you're saying this in a derogatory way, so I'm assuming you're not a fan of Booker T. Washington.
I am not a fan of Booker T. Washington, and I'm not saying it necessarily derogatorily. I'm saying it Booker T. Washington's, mentality or his teachings was learn a trade. And that's what he was teaching you in this episode, learn a trade. I mean, that's what he keeps arguing. I think even, we watched that Breakfast Club episode, and I don't know if you want to talk about it here, if you want to talk about it later, but I think it fits in here too.
Yeah, it does fit in here.
He is still arguing learn a trade. So, he is a Booker T. Washington. He is the learn a trade person.
Okay, so
to me, I don't think that you base education on learn a trade. And one of my examples, it's funny the crap that I watched, but I watched a documentary on the school system in Gary, Indiana. And the person who started the school system in Gary, Indiana based it on learn a trade. Mm-hmm. You learned a trade. And that actually spread across the state of Indiana as their standard school system, way. It was based on learn a trade. It wasn't.
What was the time period for this? This is recent or no?
No, he's dead, and this might have been the 50s or something like that. But yeah, essentially he started the learn a trade type of education system. Okay. So you build an industrial community, right?
Right.
And what we've learned in the Midwest, if you're from a mining town, or if you're from where I'm from is the steel mill, you were from Cleveland, so it would have been oil fields and stuff, trades die, industries die.
This is true.
Right? When industries die and you're only teaching people how to learn a trade, you're setting them up to only be successful for however long that industry is there. And now the industry is gone and you've got these 50, 60-year-olds who can't stop working because they weren't making enough to just quit at 60 or 50 or whatever. And now what are they going to do?
That's what happened to the people who went through his school?
They were saying that's actually one of the reasons why Gary particularly is a ghost town. Because it was an industry town. It never got built up as the suburb of Chicago that it was supposed to be. And once the industry is gone, and it dies, the people who are there who are trying to work from this learn a trade school system can't. So they either have to move out or they just end up in poverty and drugs and all this other mess.
Did they only learn one trade?
I mean, if you learn 4 trades and they're gone, it doesn't matter.
Everybody needs a handyman. Everybody needs a carpenter.
You don't need a handyman or a carpenter if you're living in a shelter.
But you're saying, so the economy itself collapsed, so there were just no jobs, period, though.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
So isn't it a product? So I guess my question is, don't those two have to go together? You need a thriving economy and a trade, a trade skill.
That's why I said that the industry always dies.
But a thriving economy, to me at least, is going to have more than one industry.
Not a trade industry. Computer science isn't a trade.
Yes, it is.
No, because it can be used elsewhere. If you're learning how to build a car, you build cars. So when the car companies move your job overseas,
right,
and you have nowhere to go build a car, now you have to learn something that completely new that you can transfer. And are you at the age to do so?
Maybe, maybe not.
And can all of those people who have learned that trade, who have learned that skill, can they take the time to do so?
But I guess, and that's a negative for the learn a trade type of schooling. But on the flip side of that, on, just, I guess, standard education, are those people doing any better?
I think I don't know.
Because
I think so, yes. But I mean,
okay.
I'm sure there's an argument that they're not.
I
can beat that argument.
And I'm gonna just make very broad, generalized statements. So don't say but. But I guess what you always hear is that coming out of these traditional schools, those people, they don't have anything to fall back on. So they go off to college, they get, let's say, English degree, and maybe they can find something here or there for, a certain period of time, but ultimately they can't find anything to sustain themselves. So are we having the same kind of issue on the standard education side? Like, those people are coming out of school and they too cannot find careers in order to support themselves, support their families. So isn't there problems with both options? I guess that's my question. Like,
there are problems with both options. But say you major in English, right?
Yeah.
You can use English in every field.
Not necessarily.
What do you mean?
I mean, you can
What do
use
you mean?
English in every field, but employers want like specific skills. And just because you have an English major doesn't mean you're going to be qualified for a job.
True, but as an English major, you're better set up to be a teacher,
Maybe.
right? And you could be an English professor.
You still have to get more schooling though.
Well, first of all, you picked the lamest degree. What
I
can
mean,
you get?
a lot of people are English majors.
But then, what do you get out of school and be an English major with, anyways?
A lot of people want to be either teachers, they want to go on
Isn't
and
that what I
get,
said first?
if I could finish, they want to be teachers, they want to go on and get a graduate level of education, but a lot of people are saying, A, people wanting to be teachers, that number is decreasing because of the conditions in the schools. B, people who want to go on to get a graduate level of education, that number is decreasing because of the cost involved. So again, I just feel like there's issues on both sides, and so I just think everything needs sort of a rethinking and a revamping. I don't think it's just trade schools. I think that there's value to that. I also think that there's values to, the standard curriculum and education in terms of critical thinking and reasoning and all of that. But I don't know. I just feel like there's issues with both.
Oh, I would also like to point out, one of the biggest problems with Booker T. Washington, it wasn't just learn a trade, but it was also that he felt like we could do no better than learn a trade.
That's not true.
All right.
That's not true.
Okay, well, I've read his speech.
I've read his speech
Yeah.
and a book about his
As
life and
separate
his
as the five
writings.
fingers on one hand.
And his
So,
writings,
I mean,
and his speeches, and his philosophies. I too have read it.
He
So,
felt like
yeah.
we would fall in line and learn a trade.
No, he felt like the South was a very violent place, and he thought in order for Black people to improve themselves, they needed to start with skills. Start with what you know or what you've been taught, and go from there and become very useful in that. Now, that's not to say that some of his ideology wasn't problematic, because obviously everybody is going to have some problematic thinking, but I do think that there was value to what he was saying. But ultimately, I don't know. Who knows what would have happened if more people would have taken on what he was doing at that time. But he built schools, and he didn't just create schools, like he literally built schools from the ground up. He had the students learn how to build a school with their hands. Like, there's something to that, to me. He hired Black teachers. He brought them in from the historically Black colleges, and he had them teach other Black students. There's something of value in that to me. And so as he was building up these communities, people were learning how to support themselves. So he wasn't perfect, but he wasn't saying like, this is the only thing that you're going to be able to do. But he said, no, there's value to this work. You should learn how to be really good at it so you can offer this value to other people, and you will succeed at it. So I don't know. I feel like it's harder. I feel like it's hard. Like, different people are going to be suited for different things, but I think the education system in general is flawed. And I'm not sure how to improve it. But getting back to this episode, though, what did you think of his idea? Or are you going to say something else?
I was, because actually you gave us a perfect segue to exactly how you described it. That is the argument he's making on that Breakfast Club episode. Exactly how you described who Booker T was and how he was giving them a trade, and he was teaching them how to build a school, and he built schools, and that's exactly the argument he's making to Envy. Like, instead of sending your kids to these private schools or whatever, what are you going to do about the public school system? Because you still pay taxes here. I own a block, and why aren't we building these schools and all those things? He's making the same argument.
And I don't disagree with it.
That's why I think he's trying to Booker T. Washington these people, because he clearly believes in that. He believes in that.
I mean, he hasn't, so far he hasn't brought up Booker T. Washington's name, so he may believe in that. I don't disagree with them. I also think that Envy had some points as well. And that's the fact that when you have parents, especially parents with not a lot of money, they don't really have a lot of options. So it's one thing to say, I'm dissatisfied with the public school system in my neighborhood. I don't know what to do about it. But some people can't just they're just not going to be able to build their own school. They're just not going to be able to do it. So for those people, what options do they have? But is there also a valid argument to be made, I'm dissatisfied with this current system. Can I organize other parents so we can recreate the schools, do something with the schools, reform the schools, or we can create our own things? I think both arguments have merit, but they both also have drawbacks. That's what I think.
All right, so in this episode, while he was Booker T. Washington, and what was it, a kindergarten class, one of the very first things he told one of the kids was, yeah, you're not going to be president.
It's true.
And told the other one that they couldn't be a doctor or whatever, and it's like, why not? But he keeps pushing on, learn a trade. Why don't you learn a trade or learn a skill or whatever, and I don't support that. I don't support it, right or wrong.
But wait a minute, he also included doctors in that as well.
No, he included the doctors in the episode for Envy. When the episode on the show, he told that kid specifically they weren't going to be a doctor.
No,
and he said, "You will not be president."
I think
exact
he said
words.
You won't be president. I don't think he said you won't be a doctor.
I mean, just think of someone, and I'm sure they have, and I'm glad Obama didn't think to take that to heart. But do you walk up to a kid at that age and say you'll never be president?
I mean, to be honest, I think he was saying it in jest, but he
wasn't. He said it over and over and over again. He said he tells kids all the time they won't be president. He believes in learn a trade. He wants them to learn how to freaking put a sink together instead of striving to be a president.
Episode, he was saying it in jest, but he was also serious about it. And I don't know. I think that there has to be a balance between being aspirational and going after your dreams and also being practical. So you may want to be president, but what are you going to do with your life until then?
But you don't tell a kid you're not going to be president.
Are you going to support yourself until then?
Go to college. Get a law degree.
And do what?
And go be an attorney. And what do you mean?
Which he also classified as a skilled occupation. So, yes, you want to be president, but how are you going to... Yes, he did. Yes, he did. So you want to be president, fine. But what are you going to do until then, until you become president? Because you have to come with a set of experiences. Why should people follow you? You have to be successful at something. What are you going to be successful at? Why should people listen to you? Why should people vote for you for president? So yeah, I think he was being very harsh, and maybe he was joking but serious. But there is something to be said, okay, I want to be president, but what does that really mean?
Stay away from my kids. Anyway, so...
What does that really mean? Be practical.
That means you want to be president. That means that you want to lead this nation. You see better for it. That you have a plan. And the way that you get there is the way that you get there. But to tell any child at a development age that they can't be president is not the way to go about it. Now, if you want to push, hey, you need to learn something else along the route, sure. And when we finally get to the part where he's trying to change the education system, and he does his focus group, and he gives those people a test that had nothing to do with none of them said they wanted to be a plumber. And I feel like his test was like, can you guys put together a sink? Do you know anything about a drain trap or whatever, right?
But the whole
of course they were going to fail that.
He asked them, would you be willing to learn a trade? And he was trying to figure out what they knew. So what was wrong with that?
So, of course they were going to fail that, and they failed that. And he says, well, the issue is you guys spend all your time on the internet, and yes, most people spend their time on the internet looking at porn. He had the stat, what did he say, 400 million hours or something? I don't know. It was a number that started with 4.
28,000 people per second are watching porn.
Watching porn on internet. So, okay, great. So we're going to incorporate porn with how to put together a door. Mm-hmm. And he goes through this, and in the episodes, he actually put together what seemed to be a good production. When we got to see snippets of it, we really only get to see the porn parts.
I thought it was quality.
But it was edited and shot in a way that makes you laugh as a viewer. I thought it was hilarious. But I also questioned how effective would that be? Like, you're watching somebody take it in the ass as they're putting together the lock on the door. Like, how much are you learning about how to put together a lock on the door? Now, at the end of this, he's saying his grades went up 75%, so he must have been on to something. But I don't know, was it up 75% because they need to make it sound good on the show, or does it actually go up? I don't know that I could focus on somebody putting together a drain and they're getting hit. It's just...
Maybe you can, but maybe somebody else
I
can.
would probably turn it off. I mean, because I need to have one... What am I doing here? Am I learning or am I being turned on? What's happening?
But everybody learns differently. I don't know how successful this idea would ultimately be. And I don't think it's going to become widespread, but I thought it was interesting, the premise of it at least. Like, if people are spending most of their time watching porn anyway, why not learn something while you're watching it? And yeah, I think one of the women, she mentioned, like, I think I really started to pay attention once the shock value wore off. So maybe other people would be the same or have the same reaction. Like, at first, it would be really hard for them to concentrate because they're like, this is porn. I'm supposed to be learning. But once they get over the fact that it's porn, maybe they would stay engaged and maybe they would be able to pick up those concepts a lot more quickly and therefore be able to, get through the program instead of, getting disengaged, getting bored, and then dropping out. I don't know. I mean, for that school that he went to, I think it was called, like, Omnitech Institute. The guy, the head of the school, seemed to be on board with it, at least for the purposes of the episode, but I don't know if that would ever be something that's true to life. I think the guy, one of the participants in the study, brought up a good point. Like, schools that are receiving public funds are probably not going to be able to do that kind of idea. So it would be really interesting to see if anyone else tried to do it.
Well, I would like to see if they release the video. I'm sure people tons of people would go get it just because they saw it on the show. But I'm wondering, like, I don't know if you watch porn. I don't watch porn. But I watch porn for a reason. I'm not watching porn like I watch this Killer Mike show. I'm not doing it for entertainment value. Like, there's a purpose in the porn. So and maybe some people do, but I know very few people who turn on, like, oh, okay, I'm chilling, let me turn on my favorite porn and, like, just watch a porno. Like some movie. Like, anybody I know who's watching porn is watching porn for a reason. And usually they don't even make it to the end of the whole porno. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, this would work if it's like, something that you're learning in your favorite TV show. Because you're watching the TV show to, I guess, focus on, like, the content of the show type of thing instead of being stimulated type in the way that you're being stimulated with porn. You're not watching porn just because it's Saturday and, let me throw on this porn. I ain't doing anything but sitting around here on the couch.
I don't know. I just feel like, again, I'm not sure this porn idea would work. But to his point, because people are so, I guess, easily distracted and bored, we're overstimulated in general. So if this can in any way focus people's attention, maybe it's worth a shot. Or maybe it's a sign that these kind of schools or programs need to find different ways to keep people engaged so they can actually get through the program, gain a skill, whatever the case may be, or get a certificate or whatever they do. So maybe it doesn't have to be porn, but maybe they need to hone in on something else that can keep people engaged. But I thought the porn idea was funny. Again, not sure how practical it would be, but we didn't get to see the whole video, so I don't know if I could just say with 100% certainty, like, oh no, there's no way they could have. I think one of the things was how to fix a plug or something like that. I don't know if I would be able to do the same thing after watching the video, but we haven't watched it, so who knows? I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know either. I like the concepts. I would watch the instructional video.
So how do you grade this episode, just in terms of the ideas and the content? How would you grade it?
I don't know, because I guess I don't know how realistic the episode was. Is it supposed to be satire? Like, maybe it's supposed to be satire and we missed out on all of that because we're trying to take it serious because he's got, like, this serious persona he's got. But
he calls himself an activist. He says he has radical ideas that are outside the box. So it could potentially be like what he thinks is a legit idea.
You know what? I'm still going to give it an A, because at the end of the day, he sees a problem. He has a way that he thinks he can fix it, and he actually goes about trying to fix the problem. And he does it professionally. He, does it in, tandem with educators. And he's actually trying to pitch this, I think, to this Omnitech Institute, who said they were on board. So anybody who goes to Omnitech or knows about their curriculum, let us know if this actually makes it up there. So yeah, I give him an A because he's not looking at a problem at the school system. I'm sure he tackled it in a way I didn't expect at all. But at least he's tackling it. He's not standing, behind some podium saying our school system is failing us. And that's it.
Right.
He's saying our school system is failing us. This is how I think I'm going to fix it. And I'm going to go ahead and take some steps to try to make that happen. So it still gets an A for me.
Yeah, I agree. I really didn't think that's where he was going at the start of the episode, but I give him an A for effort, an A for being innovative. And he did take it very seriously. He got like that sex therapist to help out with the videos. So I like the fact that he took it seriously as an idea. He pitched it. He did a focus group. So again, who knows if it will work out, but I like the fact that he wasn't, like you said, just preaching about a problem, but he was actually looking for a solution. Even if it's, an out there solution, at least he tried to address something in a pretty serious way. I thought he took the problem seriously. So, A for effort. All right. Moving right along. So our third episode was called White Gang Privilege. And in this episode, Killer Mike starts talking about the Hells Angels. I think they're like a biker club, but they're also a very violent gang from what I hear.
They're a biker gang. They're not a club, but they're a bike gang.
Biker gang. He basically emphasizes the fact that even though they're a gang, they've been known in the past for very violent activity. They're also, in terms of their, business interests, they're also quite successful. They sell merchandise. They've sued several companies for, infringing on, I think they might have some sort of like copyright or patent on something associated with their name and logo. So he was just saying, basically, why can't black gangs, why can't they do the same thing? So this was another, again, really interesting episode for me. And so his idea was, he pitched it to some people that he knew in the Crips, and his idea was to make a Coca-Cola type drink, but with the Crip logo. So what did you think of the idea in and of itself?
The idea of the pot? Or the idea of the episode?
Well, I guess maybe we should just start with the idea of the episode first. Like, what do you think about that in terms of the Crips having legitimate business interests?
So episode wise, I think that it is a perfect point about white privilege, which is really the point he's making. Sure, he does it in a gang way, like white gang privilege. Because Hells Angels is a gang, and it's a very violent gang that's known for its very violent past. And if you've done any research on them, they're into drugs, they're into murder, they're into rape. They've been nothing but violent. I think they've been chased by the FBI, wanted by the FBI. It's a very violent gang. It's not a motorcycle club. It's not a benevolent organization. But for whatever reason, because it has a white face, all of that is looked over so that we can say, it's about protection and they support the community and we know that they do this and they do that and whatever. They're a gang, a violent gang. To this day, still a violent gang. Just all you have to do is YouTube Hells Angels and you're going to see documentary after documentary about how they're a violent gang.
Right.
And he points out that, in American culture, we like the bad guy. You've got Goodfellas, you've got Scarface, you've got The Godfather. they're all gangs. It's the mafia, it's the gang. It's like we love that. We love the gang until it's a black gang.
So we like our white criminals.
We love white criminals.
Or criminal activity with a white face.
Right. Criminal activity with a white face in this country is celebrated all the time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Even if we think it's really, really bad, like Bernie Madoff, really, 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 really bad. But it's still celebrated to an extent because it's like, look how good this person can do on Wall Street or in investing. Or the Wolf of Wall Street. The Wolf of Wall Street is like the number one criminal that people, I mean, he's still going around giving, speeches and writing books or whatever, and people are showing up in droves to support this guy, and he was a criminal. He was not even just coke, he was like on meth and like some Quaaludes, like real drugs. He was like into real drugs, and he was a criminal, and it's like he's still celebrated for like his business acumen. The guy who he was best buddies with, the shoe company guy, I think it's like a one-name shoe company guy too.
That Wolf of Wall Street was?
Yes. He went to prison over the Wolf of Wall Street stuff, and he comes back and his shoe company is blown up. It's because it's like people just forget that these guys are criminals. And it's just like, oh, well, they were just down on their luck. They just did something bad this one time or whatever.
That's going to be like Billy McFarland once he was really screwed.
Right. This fire fraud thing, he's probably going to come out like a billionaire. Because it's like, oh, he was just trying really hard to put together this festival, and he just had a couple of wrong turns or whatever, but we can forgive him. But it's like, as soon as you hear Bloods and Crips, it's like, oh no, they need to be thrown under the jail. Like, we should just need to eradicate this gang culture or whatever. So it's white gang privilege, right? It's not that we don't like criminals in this society. We like criminals. I mean,
we like white criminals.
We like white criminals. We don't like criminals who aren't white. Right?
Right.
Which is saying the same thing twice, but in a different way.
But you will admit that the Crips and the Bloods are associated with some pretty bad behavior. Like, they're associated with robbing, drug dealing, killing, and things of that nature. So those perceptions are based in fact. They're not based in myth.
You know what? I don't know any Crips or Bloods that I know of. Same here. So I'm not taking any sides. But I will say that you realize our perception, because we don't know Crips and Bloods, our perception is created by what the media gives us. And the media is controlled by the same people who will celebrate, Billy McFarland for his business acumen and just say, oh, he just had that one turn. But then will demonize some black kid who just got shot in the back by a police officer, and then they'll find out that he got an F on his test in kindergarten, and that'll be the headline. So, I mean, what we know about the Crips and Bloods, I'm sure that they've killed people. I'm sure that they've killed each other. But we're only fed that by the media. Like, I've seen plenty of documentaries. If you watch, I think Vice has one.
Okay, by the media, but also so for example, there are rappers, who are known gang members, and they also celebrate it as a very violent and criminal organization. What about Snoop? Back in the day, not currently.
I think Snoop stepped out. Two, when he was in, he didn't celebrate it as violent. He just repped his set. Like, I don't remember Snoop ever like, yeah, we rolling up on this blood, or whatever he is. Like, we rolling up on the next person, and like, I don't think he's ever celebrated it as violent. I think he's repped his set, but I don't think he celebrated the violence of it.
What about Tekashi 6ix9ine?
I think those younger guys are just claiming groups.
No, he has like a 9-count indictment for doing some real gang stuff.
Whatever. First of all, I couldn't point that guy out, so I can't talk about him.
What's that color here? Okay,
I thought he was the guy who committed suicide or died.
Oh no.
So I don't. These new guys, I don't know anything about that. Like, Chris Brown says he's one of them too. I think they're just claiming people. I really just think they're claiming people.
So you don't think they're actually involved in, or they might be associated with?
Maybe.
Gang affiliated, associated with gangs.
But maybe. But I've also seen, to get to your point, I've also seen documentaries from the non-mainstream media talking about the same things that they talk about the Hells Angels, like the Bloods and the Crips actually having a ceasefire and coming together and starting doing those dance-offs instead of shooting each other, or supporting their community and giving back and teach. They talk about it in the episode. They have bike drives, they're giving away school, backpacks for the kids in the school and stuff like that. So yeah, they're gangs, and sure, the gangs had their violent history, but these gangs today, I think, aren't just violence. I mean, they do support their communities. And when things were started, I don't actually know the history of Bloods and Crips or whatever, but I could believe how this is started as a protection method for us, like the Black Panthers. This was started as a protection method for us, because we're always enemy of the state. So who's going to protect us if the state's not protecting us?
Right. So it was, yeah, okay, so it was started for that reason, but obviously it's something different, and rightly or wrongly, they're seen in a certain way. So this connects to the episode because the idea for the business is Cripa-Cola. It's a kind of cola drink very similar to Coca-Cola. And so they make it, they do it like old school style, like out of a kitchen, and they package it, and then they take it and they try to sell it to business owners. So they bring a crate in, they give a pitch, and basically say, can you start selling this product in your stores? And the business owners say no. And they start asking questions like, oh, is this the Crip gang? Like, y'all are in the gang? So they start asking those questions because they have that negative perception. So after that, they set up this focus group. And the focus group, they get a blind taste test of the Cripa-Cola. They taste it. Everybody's like, oh, this is cool. This is cola. And then once they see that it's Cripa-Cola, that's when they start saying like, oh, the Crips, known for violence, known for killing, drugs, and they start going in. So Killer Mike comes in, starts talking, and basically he goes to this whole thing similar to what we were saying, like how, you know, America, we love criminals, we love these gangsters, but once it's associated with blackness, then people have a problem. And so, the Crips, they come in, I don't know the guys' names, but it's like 4 guys. They start talking to people. They start telling them, like, hey, this is what we're actually doing in the community. And it seems to change their, I don't know if it changed their mind or if they were just like, these guys are here, so we're not about to talk mess, like, not that they're in front of our face. But they seem to be a little bit more open to the fact that the Crips aren't necessarily always, they don't necessarily always have to be associated with violence. So, but at the end of the day, Killer Mike makes a point that one of the participants, he basically said like, okay, so if you're drinking this cola, if you're drinking in a certain area and then somebody from a different gang sees you, you're basically putting a target on your back. So to address this, that's when Killer Mike goes to some Bloods that he knows, and he said, look, you know, I have this business opportunity. I pitched it to the Crips. It would be great if you guys can be a part of it. And so then they agree, and they end up going, I think it was like a farmer's market or some kind of market where they were selling a lot of different things. And the Crips have their booth with their cola called Crips-A-Cola, and then the Bloods have Blood Pop. And they sell it side by side, and it's all very nice. Everybody's getting along. People are coming by, mostly white people, buying the cola from both. So I thought it was a nice idea, but fundamentally flawed. Like, I just don't think it's going to be successful.
Well, damn. I didn't like the names of. I didn't like the names.
Cripa-Cola, I don't know.
Cripa-Cola and Blood Pop, I didn't like the names.
It should have been like CNC or something.
I don't think it's appealing. Like, they know when they went to the marketing guy, their very first thing is how do we get away from this, you know, negative image for the Bloods and the Crips or whatever.
Right.
And as a marketing guy, he was like, you know, Coke was started by a Confederate, this, that, and the third. Coke didn't have to change its image or whatever. But Coke did have to change its image. And another thing the marketing guy is leaving out is we're not dealing with Coca-Cola. You know, we're dealing with the Bloods and Crips. Those 2 names alone is going to bring up violence and gang affiliation, and that's just going to turn people away. Right. It's not like, I think it's pretty obvious to say this, like, people aren't afraid of Coke, like, or cocaine. Like, so it's not, learning that Coca-Cola had cocaine in it isn't going to make somebody not pick up that bottle.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But as we saw in the focus group, learning that you're buying a Crip Cola and you might be walking down the street and some Blood is walking by and you might get shot in the forehead is going to stop somebody from picking up that Cripa-Cola. Just by image alone. So yeah, I think the marketing guy did them a disservice by saying that, oh, you can just move forward and, you know, focus on where you're headed. Because you can if you're trying to sell a brand, right?
Right.
And you haven't, as a Crip or a Blood, you haven't been put in a position where people have become comfortable with your image, or people have become comfortable with, oh, that's just your past. Like, they think that's your present day.
Right.
You know, they think if I'm in Blood neighborhood and I'm walking around in a blue jersey, whether I'm affiliated or not, I'm about to get shot. You know what I'm saying? So in the same idea, they think that if they're walking around with a Crip Cola, whether they're affiliated or not, they're going to get harmed. And that's your present day reality. So there is something you have to do about that. And the
Right.
marketing guy didn't do him a very good service with telling him, oh no, you can just focus on going forward. I think that if they had changed the name and it wasn't so directly associated with the organizations, it could have worked because everyone who drank it enjoyed it.
Right.
You know?
Now that we're talking more about this, I guess fundamentally I also have a problem with the concept. So Killer Mike's whole thing was that, you know, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, these companies, they have killed more black people than the Crips or Bloods ever have. I think the number he cited was 270,000 versus 2,700. And while that very well may be true, it just, especially in terms of comparing it to just what seems to be his general ideology, why would we want black people to sell a poison to other black people just because a white company has been doing it? I get that it plays into this whole white privilege idea, but now that I think about the basic concept, like why do we need to take that on? Like, why couldn't he just think of a different product? Like, why do we have to sell something unhealthy back to our community? Well, we already know the effects of drinking this particular product. So now the more that I think about it, I'm like, why did he have to go with cola? But I do take your point. Like, I think the branding especially is too in your face. Like, nobody's going to want to take that risk. I certainly wouldn't, because it only takes one person to be confused, not know what's going on, not know who you are, what you represent, for that to be the end of it. So that kind of in-the-face branding, I just think is too much. It's never going to work. It's too risky. I think definitely in general, a legitimate business is a good idea, but not with that kind of in-your-face branding. As long as the Crips and Bloods, not just the perception, but the actual reality in certain places, not everywhere, but in certain places, I just don't think that kind of in-your-face branding is going to work.
And, I mean, I think one of the reasons they did the in-your-face branding is because he was trying, I guess, to see if, you know, black gangs could be as marketable as white gangs, right? So he didn't want to shy away from using the gang. But if his ultimate goal is to make them as successful as the white gangs, you might have to go about that a different route.
Way. Yeah.
Financially successful. But you're right, like, so these guys in Atlanta decided that it's okay for us to have Crip Cola and Blood Pop, and we're not going to harm people for supporting our businesses. But does Atlanta speak for New York? Does New York speak for Chicago? Does Chicago speak for LA? I mean, documentaries again. I watched a documentary of one of the, I don't remember if it was Bloods or Crips in Chicago. Like, they were at war with, like, their counterparts in LA. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, who is the dominant group in the group?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it is a chance. I don't know. I don't have such an issue with them selling pop to people because I think everyone has the opportunity to say no thank you to any pop, whether it's, you know, Crip Cola or Blue Pepsi or, you know, Blood Pop or Red, you know, Coca-Cola. If you guys didn't pick up on that, you know, Pepsi's marketed in blue, Coca-Cola's marketed in red, blue and red. Maybe this war's been going on longer than we know. What if we find out that Pepsi and Coca-Cola always been Crips and Blood? But yeah, but even the Blood guy said that, the vegan guy, he was like, you know, I'm vegan, I'm healthy, like, the issue you're gonna have with getting me in is like, what we about to do here? And then they sold him on real sugar. You know, real sugar kind of just as bad as high fructose corn syrup. Right. Especially in a pop.
Yeah, they put like a whole bunch of sugar in it.
It's just mostly sugar. But I'm not against the cola industry. Have all the Pepsi you want. So I don't know. Maybe they should have done a clothing company.
I think maybe clothing.
And it doesn't have to be so brandy. Like, you don't have to. Everybody who puts on your T-shirt doesn't have to say Crip everywhere.
I thought the one logo with the crown and the C, I thought it was really nice. I think if they would have just stuck with that, it would have been good. Like, get some merchandise behind that, see how it does, and then maybe expand to other things. But yeah.
I like the crown logo too, but I agreed with the guy. I didn't like the C on its back.
Yeah, I agree.
why not stand it up? Like, why is it on its back? Why not stand it up? But maybe he was trying to hide the Crip, even though it says Crip Cola in the cola. So,
Yeah. I like the fact that the guy created like their own font that they
That
can
was smart.
specifically. I thought that was really, really smart,
Mm-hmm.
and it just goes to show you like some things you just have to be exposed to certain things in order to know about them. And I really appreciated the fact that he did that, and that they included that for people to think about. I was like, oh, that's pretty dope.
Yeah, that guy. He was really on their side.
Yeah.
He seemed like he was scared.
I mean, he was
but
like,
on
I
their
was
side.
confused at first, but then I was really excited. I think he was being honest, because I would have been like, what? Y'all want to what? So I really liked him. He did seem a little jittery, but he also seemed like really excited, and it looked like he had some really good ideas. So yeah, I like that guy.
Yeah.
All right. So what do you think? A grade for this episode?
This episode, the idea behind it gets an A. The execution gets like a C.
I think the idea behind it gets a B. The execution, it seems like they put in a little bit of work. I give them an A for effort. But I think that
What is this?
I mean, it does look like they put some effort into it. So I definitely want to applaud that. But I just think the idea I can't get with it. So I think I'm gonna give it like a sliding scale BC.
All right.
All right.
So that's the first 3 episodes of Killer Mike. What is the actual name of the show?
Trigger warning.
Trigger warning. Killer Mike Trigger Warning. We're happy to be back talking to you guys. I think there are 3 more episodes to go.
There's 3 more episodes.
So maybe you'll hear from us after you watch those 3 episodes. But we're about to go catch the pop-up hip hop museum here in DC. I think it's here till April. So if you're in
No,
the area,
it's here. No, February.
it is February.
Mid-February. February 18th.
February 18th. It's here till February 18th down in Southwest. So if you're here, go check it out. Aside from that, anything else you want to say?
No. Do you have a toast?
I do. Happy Black History Month.
Happy Black History Month.
All right.
Cheers.
See you guys next time.